I'm excited today to have Drew Larison on the podcast. Drew's the founder and CEO of Five Door Media. Drew founded the Larison Company in 2015 and merged the company into Larison Media in early 2017. Drew's a husband, a father, and a true believer that hard work and kindness is the true key to success. Drew, I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for being on the show.
I am very happy to be here as well. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Welcome to Catalytic Leadership, the podcast designed to help leaders intentionally grow and thrive. Here is your host, author, and leadership and executive coach, Dr. William Attaway.
Drew, I'd love to start with you sharing a little bit of your story with our listeners, particularly around your journey and your development as a leader. How did you get started?
My journey as a leader probably started in childhood, to be honest. I grew up in an entrepreneurial home. My father and grandfather owned a business that is in the manufacturing world. Won't go into specifics because it's still kind of over my head exactly what they do. And as you can tell, as I own an agency, I kind of went a complete opposite route. I always tell people, like, some of the best lessons in leadership I have experienced happened at my kitchen table growing up, and my dad worked with my grandfather on a daily basis. And so a lot of dinner conversations started with my mom asking my dad, "What did your dad have to say today?" And then I would hear the stories of the shop, and I would hear the struggles, and they were specifically in a portion of manufacturing that worked in the automotive world a lot. So when 2008 happened, I saw my dad navigate that. And I am based out of Kokomo, Indiana. We are about 40 miles, like straight north of Indianapolis. And at that time, Kokomo is still very much a factory town. There's a giant Chrysler factory, or Stellantis now, as it's called, as well as some other large scale automotive factories. And Kokomo was on like the top 3 list of Forbes fastest dying cities in 2008. And my dad was a supplier for those automotive companies. So I definitely saw the stress of that. And I will forever tell the tale. My dad survived that without having to lay off a single employee. He definitely led with that leaders eat last mentality during those, years of struggle, through that depression that our country went through, especially in that automotive world. And but it really is like it's one of those things I think is partly maybe not biologically genetic, but just due to the house I grew up in and the conversations I heard and the experiences that I saw. That entrepreneurial gene of mine was strong, growing up. And I also didn't finish college. So like my dad didn't either. So like even that kind of like kept going. But I really think my leadership lessons began in my childhood and just hearing conversations from my dad at the dinner table with my mom.
That's so fascinating. And it makes me think about my story. I mean, I'm a 3rd generation entrepreneur too. I watched my grandfather, start and run a business. My dad started and ran actually a traditional advertising agency starting back in the 70s. He ran it for 45 years.
As a madman.
Yeah. Exactly. That's exactly it. Long before digital, right?
Yeah.
But the lessons that you learn at the kitchen table, the lessons that you learn simply by almost osmosis of being in the room, living in the house, and watching and listening and learning, a lot of what to do, but also sometimes what not to do. As you were observing and watching, what are some things that you took away and you're like, I'm absolutely going to be just like that. I'm doing that.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that. Like, this got brought up. So my wife works full-time in the business too. And I was having a conversation with her earlier, and she referenced in our conversation of what was something that was going on, situation was going on in our business. She literally said, "I feel like this is something Gilbert would do." And Gilbert was my grandpa.
Oh my goodness.
So it's very timely that we're talking about this, but basically it was at my grandpa's funeral. And like I said, so the grandpa, he started the business. Shout out Hoosier Spline Brooch in Kokomo, Indiana. And then at some point, my dad took it over as much as a son can take over a business from a very confident father.
Yeah.
Grandpa definitely still came into the shop every day, but dad was running, the day to day. And so at Grandpa Gilbert's funeral, somebody came up to us who had worked in the shop for forever, and he just kind of started telling stories about what it was like to know Gilbert, or in his name, he called him Gil. And it was a different, I mean, I loved my grandfather. I have like nothing negative to say, but like hearing stories from the personal side from your grandfather when you knew him as a grandfather, it's a whole different thing, right?
Yeah.
And one of the stories specifically was my grandfather put down the down payment for one of his employees' first homes and let him slowly pay off the home through his paycheck over years.
Oh my
And
goodness.
like I had no idea. I had no idea this was like a reality. And he said, like, literally, I wouldn't be where I'm at today if it wasn't for Gil or your grandpa. And I'm like, man, talk about just
Wow.
few things. One, just generational impact that like Grandpa Gilbert was able to help create, right? I mean, it's at that time, the American dream was owning a home,
Yeah.
so like Grandpa helped that guy achieve the American dream, or at least start that American dream of owning a home. And then the second thing was like, dear God, that's some familial pressure. Like, did I've got to like live up to that too? But at the same time, I mean, honestly, like that story gets brought up a lot. And like I said, we were able to do, not at that magnitude yet, but maybe one day, like help an employee with like a purchase that they needed recently that they just weren't able to do. And like that's, my wife was like, hey, we need to do this because this is something Grandpa Gilbert would do. So like
Wow.
just the pressure of that, but like to live that on. And I also say too, the biggest lesson in leadership I'll ever have. So unfortunately, nearly 10 years ago, which is actually the same year we started the business, my father actually passed away. And
Oh my goodness.
the biggest lesson I'll ever need in leadership was for his funeral, right? And it was, obviously he passed away young, so it was kind of like a chaotic planning of this funeral. Wasn't fully really expected in any way. And you're doing all the planning, you're trying to figure out flowers, you're trying to figure out the funeral home, like all right, all the details that go into burying someone. And we get a call from the shop, and it is his employees who have been there a long time, and they're like, hey, we want to be the pallbearers. And like the people that have worked for my dad were the ones that carried his casket at his funeral. And I'm like, why do I ever need to go to another leadership conference? Why do I ever need to, you know what I mean? Like, what's going to top that, like
Right.
personally in my life? So there's just been so many cool stories that I have heard, post their passing, that have impacted me in just this massive way. Like that I said, that have been really awesome to hear stories of my family members, that the side of my family members that I didn't get to see, because as like
Oof.
the relationship I had with them as if their son or their grandson.
Yeah.
But it was so cool to not just hear stories of leadership like that, and like love for your employees and like giving back to your employees, but like to know that, like, oh, that's, I've got that in me, right? Like those stories have my genes in them. What a cool thing, an opportunity that I have to like keep that going for the Larison name, So there's a lot of stories and a lot of lessons I've learned. But those two are like the first thing that will pop in my head that like really have taught me what type of leadership is not just expected, but like attainable,
Yeah.
like, because they weren't just stories I read in a book. They're stories I'm hearing at my family members' funerals, from real people that experienced it. And like, it's just the impact that had and continues to have. Like I said, like my wife literally brought it up the other day, and like a real story in our company. So it's really cool to see that impact, to see that it's attainable and real, and then be able to do that now in the position we're in is something I'll never take advantage of.
That type of legacy is such a gift, and it's not one that everybody gets. And I
So
love
yeah,
that you shared that and are living into that legacy now, you and
doing
your
my
wife
best.
and the
Yeah.
company.
Yeah.
So how did you get from growing up in that environment to digital marketing?
Great question. Yeah. So, I guess following that path of like an entrepreneurial kid, school was never something I loved. I was never someone that was able to like sit in a classroom and obtain information and learn that way. I was always like, let's get my hands dirty. I want to experience something. I want to learn while doing.
Mhm.
So like somehow graduated high school, somehow got into a college. It was actually the college that my brother got into. So I think I totally got the sympathy acceptance into that college. And now college is an interesting thing where if you don't like pass your classes, they have this thing where they don't let you come back to school. It's like
That is true.
flunking out. So the first year in college, I did that exact same thing. I was in no way like emotionally mature enough to like have that responsibility, but it's what you do, right? You go to college after high school. And so I came home after that kind of with my tail between my legs, like embarrassed and shameful that I was going through that. But then I went to a local school. It's actually Indiana University, Kokomo. It's like a sister
Mhm.
campus of IU. And my first semester at IU, I got an internship doing well, actually, let me go back. Sorry. Before I went to IU actually makes you sit out a semester if you flunked out of a school before you just dive in to IU.
Hmm.
So like I
Mhm.
had like this loser of a semester where I was just down on myself, feeling really crappy. But
Mhm.
there was this guy that I had a random connection with through church, and his name was Avin. And he, to me, my visual, he was successful, right?
Hmm.
And I'm like, that's a guy I need to have coffee with, or that's the guy I need to like sit down with. So I met up with him and I kind of told him what I was into. Said like, I don't know, I think I'm into business. I grew up in a home where business was definitely talked about. I'm creative. At that time, I was like pretty active in music. I like people, and I think I like technology. Technology's fun. Like that was around the time like iPhones were coming out, so it was like this
Uh-huh.
really big boom of like new technology waves. And he gave me a book to read, and it was called "Crush It" by Gary Vaynerchuk. And like this book was like new, right? Like this is when it just came out, and Gary was in no way the Gary V that the world knows now. And I read the book and it kind of blew my mind. And then in classic Gary V fashion, I got like this giant false self confidence going on. And like I said about like, oh my gosh, I am in Kokomo, Indiana. I'm about to blow this town away. There's this thing called social media marketing, and like you can do what you love, and you can crush it. And like it's just the cheesiest book title of all time, but it was powerful for me. So I would like arrogantly went to this car dealership that I worked at in high school, and I said like, you guys need help with this thing called digital marketing, and they're like, no, we don't, and they didn't give me an internship. And then like 6 months later, I got a random call back when I was at IUK. Now we're caught up when I was in that semester at IUK. And they called back and they're like, okay, maybe actually we are interested. So I got an internship and like made some videos for them. Like I said, I had no clue what I was doing. Like, but I had like all that Gary V self false
That's
confidence.
right.
Like, doesn't matter. I'm gonna crush it. Like that's what the book title is. That's what I'm gonna do. But like I helped them, to this day. Like I created their Facebook page for them, and like they're up and still running, and like created YouTube accounts for them and Instagram accounts and things like that. But then at the end of that internship, basically, I said, you guys want to hire me because I'm great. Look at all the things I've done for you. And then they said, no, no, we don't. But then
Oh.
another local car dealership saw what I had done at that dealership, and they offered me a job. And that's where I made the decision of like, do I finish school or do I take a job that I would want after school? Like after
Mm.
graduating, I was like, it was internet marketing director, which was way too big of a job title for what I actually was doing. But that's what they called me. So I took the job at the dealership, worked there for a few years. And then Avin, who remember gave me Crush
Mhm.
It, he
Yeah.
contacted me and said, hey, I'm looking for a social media marketing director. If you know anybody, let me know. Back to that Gary V confidence, I said, why not me? And like a few weeks later, I was hired. So I worked there at Web Success Agency, which was the name of that agency. That was like my first agency experience. Worked there for 3 years, kind of learned how the sausage was made inside of an agency, so to speak. And great experience. They went one way. I kind of wanted to go the other way. We separated ways. I took a few clients with me with their blessing because they were not going the way of those clients. Yeah. And then 10 years in June, here we are. So
Wow.
I've been running the agency for 10 years as the Larison company when it was just me working out of my house. And then it went to Larison Media when I started to get some staff. Also just a straight copy of VaynerMedia is why we went with Larison Media, because I was still obsessed with Gary Vaynerchuk at the time. And then around 3 years ago is when we really started getting comfortable and creating a really big impact for people in that home service niche.
Okay.
So that's when we decided to make that subsidiary agency, Five Door Media, just for home service companies. So there's the 10-year history. Yeah.
It's remarkable. And, there's no such thing as a wasted experience. And
Yeah.
had any of those things not been a part of the journey, I think it would have radically altered your trajectory.
You're 100%
and,
right.
and the destination.
And so much so too, I met my wife because when I was doing that internship, I was also working at Subway. I was working at McAllister's. Like I was like hustling. And I was at the movies one time with some friends, and a friend of my brother's came in. I was talking to her, and then my wife was with her. I had no idea who she was at the time, and started talking to her, and she got me my first actual job in marketing, which at that time was for a local gym. And I was allowed to do the Facebook page while I was making protein shakes behind the front desk. Like, so that was like my first job in marketing. And those were like the
Nice.
crazy days of Facebook. We would do these wild giveaways. Like I would post something like the first person to come in and run a mile on the treadmill gets a free membership for a year. And like the place would just be flooded because organic reach was crazy at that time, right? Like you could just post anything and thousands of people would see it. So we just did some buck wild things at that gym. But yeah, like Aaron, who now we've been married for over 10 years, almost 13 years. She got me my first job in marketing that I never would have met her. And like, so I mean, you're right. Like every experience like adds up to who you are and where you're at now, personal and professional. So yeah, it's wild. Her and I talk about every now and then, like if one thread in the story would not have happened, what would it look like, and it's wild to think about.
That's so true. So tell me about Five Door Media. What are you guys about?
Yeah. So Five Door Media, it's really fun. We really look at our jobs as marketers, not just as we run ad campaigns or we create social media posts or we really create great videos. We kind of take a step further and we really want to be what we call is just impact makers. We really exist to partner with home service businesses so that together we can increase their impact internally, locally, and beyond. Because we truly think that home service companies are changing the world. And like we want to play a role in their stories by helping with those creative tasks that a lot of times are things that get pushed to the side, things that are not the strong suit of the owners. But it's been a really cool thing to partner with those companies in those home services world. We work with a lot of like lawn and landscape companies. We work a lot with the cleaning world. So like the residential and commercial cleaning world, HVAC, plumbing, all those. And if you service a home, we're a great agency for you. And Five Door Media comes from something we've created called the Five Door Method, which is really our way of diagnosing marketing campaigns and ad campaigns. We truly believe that customers have to go through 5 doors before they're a paying customer. And the first one is platform. The second one is creative. The third one is targeting. The fourth one is post ad engagement. So your websites, your landing pages, your forms. And then that fifth door is sales. So when we're working with a client, we're working with an ad campaign for them. We like look at the metrics and we're able to see what door customers are getting stuck at. And then we tweak that door until they make their way through and onto the last one. So it's been a really cool, I guess, journey so far with Five Door Media. Like when we launched Five Door Media, a good chunk of our Larison Media clients were home service, so they probably just like transitioned over. But it's been cool. This Five Door method is, I think, providing a way for business owners that are not super fluent in marketing to kind of understand how it works. I'm not saying like the 5 door method is this revolutionary idea of how to diagnose an ad campaign, but like just the way that we're wording it, I think it's been refreshing for a lot of people. It's easier to understand and like attain in their brain for, oh yeah, they're getting stuck at the creative, and like the showing them the metrics. Your ads are being shown to a bunch of people, but there's zero engagement. That means your creative for that ad is not stopping the scroll. People are just going to keep going past, or we're getting more and more involved in the sales process of our clients, which is really fascinating. And because to us, the metrics we're looking at, things should be gangbusters, right? But then we're starting to like dive into the sales calls of some of our clients, and we're
Wow.
realizing, like, I kind of take it prideful, but we've had a lot of CSRs fired through our
Oh my
clients
goodness.
because we like are able to show them call recordings, and they're like, oh my gosh, that lead was ready to hand over money and they just didn't close it. So that's
Wow.
always an interesting line to walk. I think a lot of agency owners listen to this. So the last thing I want to say as an agency owner is like, oh, it's your sales problem, it's not mine, it's
Right.
not the marketing. So what
Right.
we're able to do is say that when we believe that to be the problem, but say it with proof.
Hmm.
Like show them metrics, show them like, no, man, well, they have got to door 4, they have gotten to door 5, and they're falling off. Let's listen to this call, or like, let's
Hmm.
read this email that was sent. And that's stuff
Hmm.
we get access to up top, because I really believe we could do the best marketing job in the world, but if that 5th door isn't this big, beautiful door that's welcoming to people, and that sales process is really on point, we are worthless as the
Hmm.
agency, because dollars are not going to be made from these leads, and they won't be very open to keep paying us if they're not, so if they don't have the money from the leads to pay us. So that 5th door is really important. And actually on our podcast, we're doing it by season, and the first season is all about sales. So it's been really interesting to talk to home service professionals about sales and learn more from them, which that has helped us really diagnose those 5th door issues that some of our clients are having, and then give them insights that we've learned from those home service professionals that are just crushing it in the sales world. And then that's when those doors start opening up, and
Hmm.
really working with them to get exact ROI numbers, so they know, hey, you spent this much on ads. A lot of home service world is recurring revenue, so it's great for paid ads. So it's been fun. It's been fun to like dive into home service before 5 door, but now that we're like all in on home service, it's just increased the impact tenfold. It's been really great.
As you describe what you do, it sounds very much like you are positioning yourself, presenting yourself as a growth partner,
Yeah.
that you're helping them think not just through the tactics of run this ad, run this creative, but thinking
Yeah.
strategically across their business. I would imagine your clients tend to stick around.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're spot on too. And that's what I said from the jump. Like, we don't look at ourselves as just digital marketers. We're
Yeah.
impact makers. And impact can be defined in different ways. Financial is one of them, but like we say, we love the idea of internally, locally, and beyond, like creating
Yeah.
impact. The internal impact is maybe through helping you get sales or helping you grow your audience. Someone on staff got a raise and they're able to buy a car for the first time, or maybe they have a Gilbert Larison in their lives and they're able to buy a house for the first time, like
Yeah.
those internal stories that maybe we'll never hear about. But we know they're happening if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, all those like
Mhm.
internal impact stories that could be happening. And then locally, I truly believe that the best way for a local community to grow is through strong small businesses really supporting
Mm.
it. And I know we
Yes.
don't like to talk about taxes, but the better a business does, the more you're going to pay in taxes. And those
Yeah.
tax dollars, you're going to have better roads, you're going to have
Mhm.
better schools, you're going to have better local government making better decisions, investing back in the community. And we really think what we do, the impact we're helping our clients make, goes into that. So
Mm.
like, we're not just making Facebook graphics, we're literally maybe filling potholes in a way through the work we're doing, right? Or like a school is getting a new gymnasium because of the
Yeah.
work we're helping with. So that local impact is a big deal for us too. And then that beyond impact is just due to the internet. Any business we work with is no longer confined to just their walls. Really the stories and the impact that they can be creating due to the internet and its reach could be beyond what we could possibly dream. So
Mm.
we're not marketers. We are impact makers that really are focused on creating impact internally for your business, locally for your community, and beyond for the world.
Podcast is just another way that you're adding value, even beyond your own clients. Now you're
Yeah.
adding value to people around the world.
I tell you what, too, the biggest value from the podcast is selfishly for me. Like I said, like we are able to interview the industry's best, the home industry's best, and like the things I have learned. And then in return, what my team has learned by listening to these podcast episodes does nothing but just make us so much better internally. You know, like the sales tips we're learning in that sales season. Season 2 is going to be all about AI. Like, how are the top AI home service business owners using these new futuristic tools to help, grow the impact in their home service businesses? So, like, I'll be learning from that, and so will the listeners. But like, selfishly, we learn a lot as the agency by being able to have the opportunity to talk to these business owners and then use what they're doing and their big businesses in the home service world to help our clients out, So like, man, selfishly, I get out a lot of it. I love doing the podcast. It's so fun for me.
So let me take a little turn there from that, because, Five Door Media needs you to lead at a higher level today than it did 5 years ago. And that same thing is going to be true 5 years from now. You've had phenomenal examples with your grandfather and your dad, but you've got to be on a continual growth curve. You can't just ever settle for where you are, because your clients, your team, your business is going to need you to lead at a higher level. How do you stay on top of your game? How do you level up with those new leadership skills that your team and your business will need you to have?
You are so spot on. And it's something we're going through right now. So we just launched EOS inside of our agency.
Awesome.
And it's been a really cool experience. We're about a month in, like 5 weeks in. We've had 5 L10s. Those L10s keep getting better and better. We're about to start departmental L10s as well. But that's been a really cool process for us, for so many ways. And if anybody's listening and they've launched EOS, you know what I'm talking about. It's been fascinating. We're full on for the EOS 1 software, and like we're bought in. But obviously, maybe not obviously, I'm sitting in that like visionary CEO seat. And I'll be honest, like, it has been a struggle to find, and I'm still not there. I had a conversation earlier today. Like, I am struggling to get comfortable knowing that my job now is so much of my job is thinking and like planning. And there's not a lot at the end of the day that I can like check off a box. I'm also like an Enneagram 3, which is the achiever.
Right.
So I find so much value in myself when I'm achieving things. And a lot of times that visionary seat, what you're achieving is not as tactile as maybe as what it was before. Like there's been, and my wife actually, she is the integrator for our company. So so that's been awesome. She is thriving. She is killing it. And like, that is just something we're blessed with, that we've learned, is like her yin is my yang and vice versa. But at the same time, like, I've gone to her a few times and I'm just like, Aaron, what do I do? Right. And because EOS, like the whole point of it is like accountability and details and clarity. Everybody has like to-do lists, right? Everybody has accountability charts, and they know what they're supposed to be doing. And if we're going to talk about it in a week, and if you didn't do it, there's questions. Like, everybody's very clear. And a lot of times me in that visionary seat, I'm like, well, what do I do this week? And it's been weird, and it's been hard. I'll be honest. Like the 5 weeks, there's been like definitely moments of like, am I good at this? Is this actually where I'm supposed to be? They talk a lot about having the right seat, or being the right people on the bus, but having the right people in the right seats of the bus. Like, I've had a lot of self-doubt. I've had a lot of, what's it called? Where like you're pretending, imposter syndrome, 100%. And I think I'm finally getting to a rhythm, and this is, I need therapy is really probably what it is, but like getting to the point, understanding what I accomplish is not who I am.
That's right.
And that's been a really hard thing to like grasp. And so I guess to answer your question, that was to start it, but I'm still learning that, and I love having conversations like this. I love going to masterminds. I'm digging into more really just education, constant education, and constant like trying to level up. I'm in a lot of groups where I'm having conversations with people. But the biggest thing to me is acknowledging that education is what I'm supposed to be doing. Like there's not a lot of like to-do list, check it off items anymore. It is high level. It is a lot of big picture thinking, which to me comes natural. I love it. So that doesn't help actually. You would think like someone that is a natural big picture thinker, this would be perfect. But when you mix in, I'm an Enneagram 3 who
Right.
bases 100% of my value on achievement. A lot of days I'm not going to achieve much, at least on like paper, right?
Right.
I'm going to like be working on things that might be big in the future. But a lot of times I'm just sitting around like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? You know, and like even when we launched EOS, I had like to-do list items, I had scorecards, and then I like dug into more EOS stuff, and they're like, "You're not supposed to have that stuff." I'm like, "Then what am I supposed to do if I don't have any like to-do list items?" You know, and that's luckily my wife is so amazing and like encouraging, and like she's helping me through it. But like that's honestly something I've really struggled with, like finding my identity in this new structure. And it's tough too because everybody else is loving it so much. Like
Oh,
everybody is like
wow.
really leaned into the EOS model, and they're loving the accountability, the clarity of roles and things like that. I mean, we're 10 years old. We barely had like an organizational chart, you know, now we have like a full accountability chart, and like everybody's loving it. And I'm just sitting back like, that's cool. I'm glad you guys are great. So I'm gonna go read a book, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, but like that's a part of it, you know, and it's been interesting. So maybe if we talk in 6 months, I'll have a different answer. But like that's has been something I've struggled with, you know, and I think I'm a little bit ADD, so that doesn't help in the cluster of whatever the situation is either. I will say we have a plan. So my wife and I share an executive assistant,
Oh,
and I
nice.
think we're gonna really talk to her. Shout
Yeah.
out Shine, she's amazing. To where she can help me keep accountable on things I should be doing or needles that should be moving. But it's been hard. It's been hard.
Mm.
But I think we're on the right path.
Well, I think you are too. You know, the turn that you're making right now is one that most leaders do not make.
Mm.
And the reason for that is that they draw so much of their self-worth and their identity, like you were saying, from what they get done. And that's understandable. And
Yeah.
if you want to build a lifestyle business where everything centers around you, great, go for it. But if you want to build something that scales, and if you want to build something that one day becomes a sellable asset, you have to remove yourself from the center of the spider web. And
Yeah.
that takes exactly what you're describing. You have to make the turn from being an individual contributor to being a CEO.
Mm.
You have to move from getting things done to getting things done through other people, which
Who
means
not
that
how, right?
your list isn't checking anymore. You're not checking boxes. It's a whole different ballgame now.
It's tough. It's tough. And like I said, with that
Yeah.
other cluster of my Enneagram 3-ness, it's been a
Right.
challenge. Yeah, it's been a cluster.
That adds a layer of complexity. It does.
Sure does.
So as you continue to learn and as you grow, is there a book that has made a big difference in your journey that you'd recommend to the leaders who are listening?
Well, of course, Crush It, right? That's the one that started
That's
it
right.
all.
The one that started
Um,
everything. That's
yeah.
right.
No, I think the most recent book that was, and I don't think I'm speaking in hyperbole, but like the changed my life was that is 10x is easier than 2x. That
Oh,
book was
so good.
so freaking good. I remember my daughter is on a swim team, and I was listening to the audiobook while at a swim meet, which if there's any swim parents out there, you know what I'm talking about. It is a 4-hour event that your kid participates maybe in 45 seconds of. So it's a lot of sitting around and wait. But I was listening to that book, and I remember just like I was in this giant natatorium of like 600 people, but like I was so focused, which is rare for me, because that book changed my life, you know, and like it really talked to me about you can't do everything, you know, and the people that have become the greatest are the ones that get super hyper focused and are able to answer that question, who, not how, right? And they're the ones that are able to delegate and really focus on just what they are the best at. I have a friend, her name's Angela Chanowski, and she owns a virtual assistant agency, but it's called Unique Genius. And like they're really big believers on that too, helping entrepreneurs find their unique genius and then finding other people to take care of the rest. So like her and I, we talk a lot about that. But that book, 10X is easier than 2X. The line that will stick with anybody who reads it: what got you to where you are now is not what's going to get you to where you're going. And like that rocked my world when I read that. Right. And like, that's probably when we started going down that 5-door path and started talking about EOS and all that kind of stuff. It's just that leveling up moment, and it's a scary moment. I often describe running a business that's growing as you have a backpack and you're walking on a sidewalk, and simultaneously the sidewalk gets more narrow and your backpack gets more heavy. And then all of a sudden you get to a point and it starts widening again and the backpack gets lighter. But then it's just constant of that. Like it is a constant path of walking down that sidewalk with, when it gets narrow, the weight of it carries gets heavier. And then you get to this comfortable point where you're at a part of growth where like you have good people, you have the right people, and all of a sudden it gets really hard again. And that the sidewalk gets narrow again, and that backpack gets heavier. Like that is, but that breaking point is that point where the book talks about what got you to where you are at this breaking point is not what's going to get you where you're going next, which is that more comfortable sidewalk again. And it's a scary moment, but it's such an encouraging thing to hear and understand that every business that's ever grown goes through this. This is not a Larison Media thing. This is not a 5-door media thing. This is just a business thing, right? And to hear that was really encouraging.
Drew, this has been such a phenomenal conversation. I feel like I could talk to you for another hour and continue to gain these golden nuggets of insight that you've picked up along the way. Thank you for being so generous today and sharing from your journey so far. I know our listeners are going to want to stay connected to you and continue to learn more from you and about what you and 5-door and Larison Media are doing. What's the best way for them to do that?
Absolutely. Yeah. You can connect with me on Facebook at Drew Larison with 1 R, often commonly misspelled. A lot of people to put 2 R's in there, or just anywhere really. It's at Mr. Drew Larison is my handle in a lot of places. So follow me on Instagram or connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find. 5doormedia.com, larisonmedia.com. Should be pretty easy to find me. Not a lot of Drew Larisons out there. It's a pretty unique name. Yeah.
We will have all those links in the show notes. And what is the name of the podcast?
It's just the 5-door media podcast. So we
the 5-door media podcast.
Like I said, the unique thing about what we're doing so far is we're doing it by season, and every season is the same topic. So we have like 10 episodes on sales coming out, and then the next 10 will be all on AI. So we're doing it in that way.
Well, I want to encourage our listeners to go check that out, because I know there's a lot of value there.
Oh yeah.
Drew, thank you so much for today.
Thank you.